apologize for that, Cecil. Thank you for that. So now we are going to listen to Debasish LAHIRI, and Cecil Umani introduced him yesterday in Nanterre. But I'm very, very happy and feel privileged to welcome him in the University of Paris 13. Thank you so much for being there. And I would like to just tell you that his first collection of poems is called My First Will and Testament. He had brought copies to show you, but we don't have it on the spot. But if you want more details, I can give it to you. Because this first book of collections was published by Writers' Workshop in Calcutta. And since the days of P. Lal, Writers' Workshop encourages avant-garde Indo-Anglian poetry. And we are now very privileged to listen to avant-garde Indo-Anglian poetry in the voice of Debasish LAHIRI.
Thank you, ma'am. I begin reading my poems, quite recent poems, not from my first book, with a poem that is called The Stopped Clock at Chourangi. Of course, it's the heart of Calcutta. The Stopped Clock at Chourangi. A stopped clock mirrors time, as a moving one can never do. The turning arms of a clock that probe and jab at the jaw of light, or the soft pink darkness of starless nights, far above street lights, especially at dawn when the night forgets light a while, between a hopeful wave, perhaps of recognition, or a circular heft of the hand, the opportunity of remembering, lost for now, makes living an anodyne for the bruise of minutes, makes breathing a system of measurement. Stopped clocks in city squares, like broken wind vanes, seesawing in the high wind, pointing to earth and heaven, alternatively, mark time as a morality play, where to act is to err. Or else why do Dali and De Chirico's clocks play patience with piazzas with a poker face? Beware of working clocks. Their works and days transfix time with motion. We move out of cities with stopped clocks. There is no escaping those with moving ones. The next poem I'm going to read is, of course, related to something I was talking about yesterday. A poem by Sarojini Naidu, which is, of course, called In the Bazaars of Hyderabad. So it was when I was in the city, quite recently, that I wrote this poem, and I dedicated this poem to Sarojini Naidu. It is also called In the Bazaars of Hyderabad. Like pinched arteries through which the blood walks with the heft of a sultan, the narrowing of the roads, the confinement of the lanes through which the crowds pour, viscous at evening, swilled with the darkness, delicious as low burning lights, brings us to the old heart of the city, the bazaars of Hyderabad. What do you sell, O ye merchants? Lentils and dates and spice? What do you sell, O ye merchants? Bangles and tassels and perfume? Ginger and herbs resume acquaintance with my breathing, more used to a city's effluvia of being forgetful, dropping things and letting them rot in their place. Do cars ever contemplate their exhaust? Goat-hide and Athar debate the ushering in of the stars as the moon stands undecided between electric lines, unsure whether to brave the uplifted gossamer of abuse on a night of the power cut. In the bazaars of Hyderabad, winter has come to roost like a blind hawk that cannot but ignore the random lives of threatening tumult that bounce and hoist a loud essence of voice at the first stars. The stars swatted down like the flies that owners of eating houses on Charminar Road keep swatting around their stale cauldrons of biryani, thus telling time deep into the night. The jewelers call you here as the vegetable sellers. Pearls, rubies, carrots, thyme, glass and steel prostitutes nudge the undying elegance of the Nizam's gables and arteries. Suddenly, a muezzin calls to prayer the very air of the place. A cannonade of startled pigeons burst through the thin indifference I had carried into the square. Now the granite of the arcades is having goose flesh. I am in history. The next poem that I'm going to read is about the city of Madurai and about its river, Vaikin. We had Cecile Omani reading her poem in her newly published book, which is also on Madurai, where she talks about a very personal attachment to the city, which she had lately discovered. And it's very interesting that she talks about almost similar images, but mine is more or less a rejoinder, if I could put it that way, to the great poem written by A.K. Ramanujan, which is about the rivers of Madurai. So I've called my poem Not About Rivers, Madurai, and I've dedicated it to A.K. Ramanujan. It starts with a little preface which I've called a cynic's preface, and then I get into the body of the poem. Not About Rivers, Madurai, for A.K. Ramanujan. A cynic's preface. The city has gone. The river has followed it. The temple tried, but was slowed down by the distraction of the artist madly taking on time on its walls. The sad gravity of this reluctant going allowed it refuge, midway in the gaps of Ramanujan's lines. Not About Rivers 1. Windows open like oranges, with the pip of my shadow upon them. In this city, where the river is a road, and the road becomes the river, an upstart born out of wedlock with the seasons, a late March foreplay with the clouds that got serious overnight. 2. So this is not about the river, nor the buffalo tours that claim it, or the civic laws. This is not about the city, where poets sat beside the river and sang of poets who had sung about the river. I had instead watched this opening of a window, riverwards and nondescript, watched the spiders taking us back to a time when light was woven by hands. The scent of an impatient city, too ready to let itself languish in decay, baits the busy, bullying traffic and startles the stray black bird in the sun. It drifts up from the river, which does not flow, merely holds in trust for oblivion. Poets who sang or somber-suited frowned on the excesses of language committed by earlier singing poets by a wending river, have dropped their epithets in the mud, and now vacantly witness the tragedy of being rooted in words, of being secure in the belief that those words make and unmake a universe. The poets must have left in a hurry, packed even their memories when they left the city of basalt, lately of the Bougainvillea. Their sentences must be on the mudflats, great silent flocks that graze on words. On Vaigai Bridge, between the future and past of traffic, I saw thunder and lightning over Madurai. I twisted evening round streets of balconies and drapes of shadow that ought to have been eucalyptus, acacia and mango, the once verdant limit of some poet's dream. Deep into the summer's eating of the night, like a worm, only half lost in the streets, where dogs can take wings and images explain nothing away, I amble like that herald of the rains who has lost his message by the rock-breasted river. Perhaps, when the flood comes and I am not here, it will be time to write again. My next poem is also about southern India. It's about the great chariots that you find at Mahabalipuram. It's called the Rathas of Mahabalipuram. The Rathas of Mahabalipuram. When the gods, like a pious mirage, led men to the margins of the sea and then became the sea. Man was stranded between elements. To allay his confusion, he chose rocks, monsters that grew out of the sand. But human art only found another margin, its own. Since then, the master artisan had decreed that man and stone shall only breathe the sea's exhalations. Breathing becomes art by being millennial. It is not human hands that shape these stones, but human waiting. The sea rises and falls in its symphony of surf, and rocks in the sun age into strange shapes that time regards as divine. On the sands of Mahabalipuram, sheer rock softens into the dance of Shiva, the repose of Vishnu. Rocks become art by listening to the sun's obad and dreaming on the crests of the sea's lullaby. A man in the sun, listening to the sea's chisel on rock, can become a rock. This other poem, it's called After the Clinic, and this is the one that Cecile Omani is translating for
Siècle 21,
yes.
literary journal.
It's been done. This is something that I wrote a while back when I had to be admitted to a hospital. I mean, thanks to the Indian weather, of course. In India, they never take chances and they put you in a nursing home, and because, of course, the oxygen and everything else. So I just spent 24 hours in one of these little clinics, and what I saw around me gave rise to these lines, which I wrote some days after that. It's called After the Clinic. I feel a lifetime's pause in the jangle of keys at the front door. That was me letting myself in half an hour ago. I smelt my father next to me. The darkness intervening was badly creased by the pressure of his embrace. Invisible is coming near. It is the aging of work, the climbing of the skin to the summit of every last rhyme on the daily rosary of my words. Was it grief that moved like a slow mass of ointment down my cheeks? Could it be gathered in an undying vase? My nose used to be my trusted compass, but I could never stop the tears from flowing to the sea. It always knew. My hands are not fully grown. Coupling veins bear the promise of sterility in these little hands that are large enough for the clock in their own imaginations. These hands have the inexorable heft of time, springy and lugubrious, scored and sliding on the grease of moments. I am done with the juvenilia of the marrow. Only the dead are fully grown. Lying where they lie so well, at the clinic, I heard the barbarian music of the pulse, illegible but not inaudible. It sang, "Love is where you fade out, die towards that impossible point of dying." I have grown strange with life, like the company of women who dance. At 3 in the morning, there is enough light to see that the same phenomena does not have the same impact when repeated. That even disease does not feel as well as it used to and never will. My last consolation is gone. For these rendings, they say, you will be written about. The next poem is called Electric Water. It was written quite recently, a couple of months back. This relates to an incident that happened when there were these unseasonal rains in and around Calcutta. And a boat crossing the river Bhagirathi, the river Ganges, got struck by lightning, which killed 3 people, 2 women and 1 man. Not very far from where I live, actually. The river is very close to where I live. So this was a response to that poem. It's called Electric Water. The sky has lost the chords and colors of evening. Awaiting ferments the mud. The water has perished, holding its breath. A wind, washing silk on a bridge of boats, gathers men in speech women in silence. Long ago, at the feet of a convalescent, words had allowed light to take flight. Watching the heart-shadow water lying like dead roots around the boat, memory went back to the convalescent with the regret of timeliness. It was the dead water that was mourned by the storm. The water had gone green in its refusal to taste the sour loam of failed dreams of fishes that flew. The storm quivered with the rage felt by the sky's hide, like a drum shuddering in a quiet room, remembering a festival of memories, mad rhythms devised to help escape the tyranny of words. The thunder, when it came, was blue. It clawed the waters with talons of lightning. Water grew like grass, blue-bladed grass, growing in electric waters. The thunder was a halo around forgetting. On the boat's temple, it stood as a blue battle scar. Water had lost its tense. It refused to flow. Electric water had erased that Babel of possessions, where boats come and go, laden with emptiness, yet empty. Those who refuse the thunder's will have the faces of their ancestors wiped from their faces. All colors melt in a prism of blue suns that reveal the infinity of a man's tread, its miracle. Those who refuse the thunder's desire for the tones, not words, of silence, loud and unbearably inarticulate, shall have their time unmoored from that greater time in which nothing can be born. Heavy as stone, light as a deaf sparrow running from its own shadow, the sound of thunder is a very silent thing. And I would like to end with a very small poem, a very short poem. It's a love poem, one that I wrote after a long time. It's called Not All for Love. The sound of the unpicking of a lock makes silence. Resume the dark, relume the light. Leave the pillow of every day, where time sleeps every night, and you only at intervals. Move away the parchments of love's casuistry that wave at the wind by day, like spiders' webs, and by night fall into sleeplessness. Go relume the dark, resume the light. Go reclaim yourself for love.